Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Salaam alaikum everybody. Welcome back to the Benefits of Trials by Deen ibn Abd. Salaam. My name is AbdelRahman, and today we're going to be doing the sixth benefit, which is kind of a new category. The past few videos have been about how the trial that we're in can make us more focused and more sincere and more desperate in our prayers. And now, Deen ibn Abd Salam, he goes to the next section, really, in the next category, and he talks about some of the fruits of what you gain from the trial that you were in. So the first section he talked about sort of these realizations and these moments, the sharpening of your dua, and now he says that as-sadisa is al-hilmu amman sadarat anhu al-musibah, that you gain this sense of hilm because of what you had to go through in your difficulty, in your trial. And he quotes, and specifically, Surah Al-Safat, which is the chapter that has, and he quotes the story of Ibrahim and Ismail, فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ, that Allah Ta'ala gave him the glad tidings or the good news of a really, of a forbearant son, a young man, a forbearant young man, Halim. We'll translate that a little bit. And then he quotes the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that إِنَّ فِيكَ خَصْلَتَيْن يُحِبُّهُمَا Allah, that there are two things inside of you that Allah Ta'ala, He loves. Number one, he said al-hilm, and number two is al-ina. This is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was speaking to a companion, and this companion was one of the leaders of his tribe. His name was Shaj Abdul Qais. Shaj Abdul Qais. And the Prophet ﷺ was telling him that, he was complimenting him. He was saying that you have two characteristics that Allah Ta'ala, He loves them. Number one is that you have hilm, and number two is that you have ina, which is another word for this really, really good form of patience. So we'll talk a little bit about this. But what does hilm mean? Hilm is a person's ability to persevere, and it has a connotation of also including intelligence. So it's not just a person's sheer brute strength, but it's almost referring to the person's ability to process something and to be patient, not only from a physical standpoint, but from an intellectual standpoint, from a cognitive standpoint. And it's remarkable, subhanAllah, that he mentions this, because when you think about trials and difficulties, many of them, as they say in English, in the English language, we have a phrase or an expression that we use commonly is, it's mind over matter. A lot of times we talk about difficulties, and those difficulties do present physical realities to us, but in another realm, they also challenge us, intellectually. We become tired, we become exhausted. You wake up feeling down because the trial is just weighing so heavily upon you. And so what he's saying here is that when you go through the trial, and as you're going through it, or if you find yourself sort of at the end of it, or at the end of one of them, because life is just full of trials, but as you're going through it, you start to recognize and realize that you're gaining this strength. You're gaining this new ability that you didn't have before the trial hit you. I've just now been running for the past few days. The first day was miserable. Second day was miserable. And then the third day, subhanAllah, I didn't feel as miserable. It was still painful. The running was not easy. The difficulty was still there. But it was almost as if I had been better equipped, or I had adapted to it. And I had now been able to do it better than I did on the first day that I started. So it's the same with any challenge Allah puts us in. The first day, the second day, the first week, the first month, whatever situation you find yourself in, you're questioning yourself, how can I do this? And then you start to realize, subhanAllah, how many new talents, how many new strengths, how much patience Allah has granted you by virtue of this. I always tell young couples when they're trying to get married and there's a lot of roadblocks in the way, whether it's financial or cultural or whatever, I say the patience that you show now in these trials of trying to get married, with whatever it might be, financial or cultural roadblocks, I said the patience you show now is going to come in very handy when you get married, because you're never going to live a day of your life where you won't need patience. It doesn't mean that you don't love the person, but you're going to have struggles. When you have kids, you're going to need patience, right? The pregnancy, the 9 months that a woman goes through in developing the child in her womb, and the support that the husband provides, emotionally, physically, all that, in that entire development process, those 9 months are preparing you for the difficulty and the challenges along with the benefits, of course, and the amazing moments of having a child. So every challenge has its benefits. Every challenge has its opportunities. And that's what he's saying here. The sixth point is that you learn that you're now stronger than you were before. So the story of Ibrahim is very powerful. That's why he mentions it. فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ. Ibrahim was tested. Every prophet was. Ibrahim was tested, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a reward or as a result for his test, he gave him a son, and he doesn't just describe him as a son, he said that he's a really, really well-behaved son. He's a great son. And that behavior, that patience, that Ismail, his son, alayhi salam, that he exhibited, it didn't just come from nowhere. It came from the fact that Ismail also was born into a difficult situation. When he was left in the middle of the desert with his mother Hajar, alayhi salam, and is screaming and crying because he's hungry, and his mother is running back and forth. If you've done Hajj or Umrah before, I'm sure you've been in this area, in the sa'i, where you're running back and forth. These are the moments of worship that remind us of that story. That's a difficult upbringing. It's not easy. Ismail had to be patient. He grew up in the middle of the desert when Allah Ta'ala described that area as it was a wad, that it was a valley with no zara', with no vegetation, no growth, no agriculture, right? And because of Zamzam, some things started to come and some tribes started to come and protect them. But in reality, it wasn't an easy life still. It wasn't very easy. So then fast forward, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he continues in Surah Safat the story, and he tells us that when Ismail reached an age of maturity, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had tested Ibrahim by showing him the dream in which he slaughtered his son, he said, Inni ara fil manami anni adbahuka fandur madha tara. I saw in my dream that I have to slaughter you, tell me what you think. Then Ismail responded, why? With hilm. Why? Because he was raised in a difficult situation. That difficult upbringing gave him patience. So his response was, Ya abati if'al ma tu'mar satajiduni insha'Allah min as-sabirin. It was after the equal sign. His whole life was a bunch of difficult variables, and then you have the equal sign, and at the other side it said sabr, right? Oh my father, do what you have been commanded. Insha'Allah, you'll find me amongst those who are patient. Right? And in that patience, when Ibrahim a.s. fulfilled the command of Allah, took him to the mountain, tried to sacrifice his son for the sake of Allah, then Allah rewarded them by sending down an animal as a replacement. These are the moments of ups and downs in life where Deen ibn Abd, he says, you're gaining now these moments of courage and of strength and of patience that you never had before. The last thing I'll say is this. Shaj Abdul Qais was a leader of his tribe, and the Prophet ﷺ is telling him that you have these two characteristics that Allah loves. And as a leader, these characteristics are more important than for people who have no responsibility in leadership. And the reality is everyone has responsibility of leadership to some degree. كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ. The Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَاعِتِهِ. All of you are shepherds and you're going to be asked about your flock. So everyone has some form of leadership in their life, whether it's in the family, whether it's at your workplace, whether it's in your friends group. Everyone has responsibilities. These two qualities are qualities that the Prophet ﷺ said are inherent to this leader, and this is why Allah Ta'ala loves these two qualities within him. Number one was hilm. He had forbearance. He was able to mentally process things and be mentally strong and physically strong. Wal inah, and as a result of that, he had patience. He was able to exhibit a beautiful patience. Then Deen ibn Abd, he finishes by saying that there are some differences in the levels of hilm, right? وَتَخْتَلَفُ مُرَاتِبُ الْحِلْم بِاخْتِلَافٍ الْمَصَائِبِ, that are related to the differences in trials. So don't think that just because you went through one trial, now you've reached the status of hilm, right? You might have reached level 1, right? Level 1 hilm, and then now the next trial is going to take you to level 2. في صغارها وكبيرها فالحلم عند الأعظم المصائب أفضل من كل حلم. That every trial that gives you the bigger trials in life, the greater trials in life that give you hilm, it's greater than any kind of hilm. So this is him telling us that you're going to go through a bunch of challenges, they're going to have a lot of difficulties, and lastly he says the more you're challenged, the more you're benefiting. the more you are being challenged, the greater you're benefiting. Whatever challenge you're going through, if you tell yourself that I can't do this, I can't handle this, how am I going to get through this? Just know that there will come a day that when you have gotten through it, you'll be telling yourself how much you've gained from this trial. You've become a new person. You've grown so much as a result of that. We ask Allah Ta'ala to give us clarity in these matters and situations, and we ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to grant us hilm and inah and sabr and everything that we need to get through difficulties in life. We'll see you guys tomorrow for episode 7, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.